It's a nasty place. People are very sad, very frightened, very lonely. It's breaking their mental health. It's a place where you see horror, and it's a place of misery, and it simply isn't coping. I'm a Quaker. I go out to talk to people, generally to try and lift spirits, to listen to people's problems, and to be a sane and friendly presence.
For 8 years, until late last year, Liz Bridge was Quaker chaplain at Wandsworth Prison, a voluntary role. Over that time, she says she's watched more and more prisoners squeezed into an increasingly dilapidated Victorian building, conditions getting worse and worse.
I was given 2 rooms to work in at the bottom of G Wing. G Wing is, I think, the nastiest corner of the prison, and the basement runs with rats. The sewage water comes up. I would arrive in my room in the morning, open the door and bang to watch rats leaving.
It wasn't her own situation that troubled her most, but the prisoners, living every day, often without the most basic necessities.
I knew men who were in the same clothes that they'd arrived in, and they'd been in the prison 2-3 weeks, and they couldn't get a kit change.
What did you feel about that?
Horrified. Absolutely horrified. I found I was observing which wings had pants, and I was stealing a roll of pants from reception and delivering them to a wing.
The toll it takes on the men, she says, grimly obvious.
Men are locked up for 23 hours a day sometimes. People who are not mentally ill are often locked in a cell for 23 hours a day with people who are mentally ill. And that's not a way to improve anybody's health.
It's a prison built for about 950 men and is now home to more than 1,600. She says levels of violence are frightening. The pressure dominoes through the jail and staff sickness rates are high.
I don't think Wandsworth is fit for an animal, let alone a human.
Do you worry about his ability to survive it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Cassie has noticed her son's decline over the months he's spent in Wandsworth. She's asked to be anonymous, so we've changed her name.
Before my son was put on remand in Wandsworth, I felt, you know, you've done the crime, do the time. That was my attitude. I'm not asking for 5-star special treatment, but it's not livable. And that's my beef. It's inhumane.
There is the lack of decent food, the lack of activity or proper education, but almost worse, she says, is the humiliation, the dehumanising treatment.
My son said there was no toilet roll. He'd been asking for it. We're running low. He rang the buzzer for a toilet roll because he needed the toilet and got told to use his hands. Who does that?
Anne, we've changed her name, also has a son in Wandsworth. He struggled with mental health issues before jail, but the filthy conditions and, she fears, degrading treatment are leaving him almost unrecognisable.
Last year, the toilet is overflowing in the cell. It was all over the floor, and they're eating their dinner in the cell where their faeces are. He looks ill. He looks pale, grey, half his body weight, and mentally, well, it's destroyed him now. He's non-violent. We know he has to pay, but the conditions that he's got to live in, you wouldn't expect anyone in 2024 to live like it.
While conditions inside the prison left Liz increasingly concerned, she says she also became desperately worried about a handful of extremely vulnerable prisoners who were getting out and had nothing. Through the prison's online system that allows family to send men money, she gave them small amounts of between £15 and £30 from her own account without informing prison management.
These were men who were going to leave homeless and who were very, very frightened about leaving and how they would cope. One of them I had seen cut down from attempting to hang himself. One was a very, very serious self-harmer. And I was told that I had put the prison at risk.
So just last month, Liz Bridge was banned from volunteering at any prison for 5 years. In a letter, the prison service said the exclusion reflected a very serious breach of professional standards. She had not formally declared her financial relationships with prisoners, compromising security. She says she's worried about the prisoners she's left behind. Today, yet another damning report into the state of Britain's jails. This time, HMP Bedford. Conditions described by the Chief Inspector as some of the worst he's seen. Infestations of rats and cockroaches, walls so damp they were wet to the touch, and an underground segregation unit holding acutely mentally unwell men, described as a disgrace. Wandsworth hit the headlines back in September when a prisoner being held on terrorism charges was accused of escaping. At the time, Wandsworth and Bedford were on a list of ageing jails the Chief Inspector of Prisons says ideally would be shut down. Among a number unable to provide even basic levels of safety and decency, raising questions about their ability to rehabilitate prisoners. Campaigners say it's time to overhaul the entire system.
The problem is that the government's got itself into trouble. So it's committed itself to more and more prison places. It's committed itself to more and more punitive sentencing, which means more people go to jail for longer. So rather than spending £4 billion building new prisons, our preference would be to invest a fraction of that money, frankly, in making those prisons we currently have habitable, because these are inhabitable spaces. They are squalid, unsuitable for human habitation, and yet we're piling more and more people into them.
So no longer allowed inside Wandsworth. The former chaplain says she intends to be a troublemaker outside, fighting for change.
I was complicit in what was happening because I wasn't speaking up. And I kept thinking, actually, maybe I'm doing more good staying in. But it's just got worse.
Jackie Long reporting, well, excuse me, a prison service spokesperson told us we are already taking decisive action to improve safety and conditions at HMP Wandsworth, including boosting staffing levels and investing millions into upgrades, such as rolling out new CCTV, installing new windows and repairing roofs, as well as refurbishing healthcare facilities. Cells are only doubled up where it is safe to do so, and our £100 million security crackdown is also helping to significantly reduce the number of assaults in our jails. Well, joining me now to talk about the conditions in Wandsworth Prison is the MP for Tooting, Dr. Rosanna Allen-Khan, whose constituency the prison is in. Thank you for coming in. I mean, but you know a lot of people will watch that and go, well, who cares? They're prisoners.
I understand, but really this is about basic human rights, and it's really important to also understand that in Wandsworth we have a lot of people waiting trial. But sharing your cell with rats, having a shower with pigeons present, and being unable to leave your cell for up to 23 hours a day just isn't humane. And I think it's really important that I say a huge thanks to all of the prison staff that do go in every day and work incredibly hard, but the conditions under which they need to work is impossible. They are so short-staffed. They are taking on average 6 mental health days every year, and there are 3 assaults every single day. This can't go on.
But this requires a lot of cash, doesn't it, to fix it, is the truth. And hospitals are struggling, school classrooms are falling down. Why are prisons going to be a priority in that world?
Well, you're absolutely right. We have got old hospital infrastructure that needs support. We have got our schools falling down. We have our prisons falling apart, old Victorian buildings. And that is what you get from 14 years of the Tories not investing. Look, they actually promised that by 2020, they would have 20,000 new prison officers. They didn't even deliver close to that target. By that point, they'd only recruited a couple of hundred. Now, they're not even halfway to meeting that. Now, ultimately, yes, we do need to say that, you know, people deserve to have dignity and be rehabilitated. but they can't currently continue to live like this. We know that, for example, in Wandsworth, because I've been there many times, and on my most recent visit, I could see classrooms, I could see places for people to learn trades, but none of those are being used. They're just standing empty.
Obviously, we don't know the absolute details of the case, but do you think a prison chaplain should be expelled from prison effectively for giving a few pounds to terrified prisoners who are leaving the prison?
I think she's incredibly brave in speaking out, and I take my hat off to her. And the report was really, really difficult to watch, and she's incredibly brave. And ultimately, the fact that she felt she needed to do that because there was nothing else available for these vulnerable people is really a testament to where we are. Look, I'll be really honest with you. There is one case that I've been sort of helping a family, supporting them with, of an inmate in Wandsworth who had for many weeks a nail in his head. The family and his lawyers have been asking for a mental health assessment, and he still hasn't received one.
Do you mean self-inflicted?
Self-inflicted, self-harming, mental health issues. He has a nail in his head. He is very, very unwell, and the prison service have not been engaging with the family and with the lawyers on how he can get mental health support.
I mean, if I can come at you from the other side, then isn't there also really a question of who you're sending to prison? And why you're sending to prison. And the truth is, as we go into this election year, Labour, doesn't really talk any differently to the Tories in terms of sentencing policy or really changing the size of the prison population. What you talk about is, well, we'll build the prisons, rather than we'll really think about whether these people should be in prison at all.
Currently, we have 1,300 people who've been waiting over 3 years to even be on trial, to have their trial reach the Crown Court. Ultimately, there is a huge backlog. That is the responsibility of this Conservative government. The responsibility of this Conservative government is making sure that we have buildings fit for purpose, and the responsibility of this Conservative government that we've had for the last 14 years is to make sure that we don't have the recruitment and retention crisis that we have. We know that on the day that Daniel Khalif actually escaped from Wandsworth Prison, the Prison Officers Association informed me that they were 40% down on the numbers of staff that should have been at work that day. And in 2022, I actually asked the government why there was one night in December where there were only 7 members of staff present for 1,600 inmates. And every single time I've asked the government to be transparent, I've just been met with smoke and mirrors.
But do you think we need a bigger conversation about prison? You look at the Netherlands, they're closing prisons down. They are totally changing the way they sentence people and keeping people in communities. And they're not seeing a great rise in crime as a result.
Well, I mean, the current manifesto is being looked at by people who hold the brief, who are doing an incredible amount of work on this. I don't know what's going to be in it. I wouldn't like to second guess that. But I do know that ultimately, as we sit here today, there are people who are living in squalor who, quite frankly, deserve better, and there are members of staff who are going to work every day fearing for their own lives and taking time off due to their mental health, and that needs to be sorted, and ultimately that responsibility lies with this government.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Rosanna Allen Khan. And just because there's an active case, I should say that was an alleged escape.
Alleged escape, right.
from Wandsworth Prison. But thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.